Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today's video is specially requested by these two comments. So today we're going to look into another application of how we can use the chatbot in Dialogflow. Here are the intents that we created last time. Make sure to check the previous video so that you're caught up. So now we're going to head and create a new intent because we're going to do something a little bit different this time. First, we need to create our main intent for booking flights. We're going to name this BookFlight. And then we're going to go down to the training phrases. Here are the things that the user will ask. So one of them is I want to book a flight. Another one could be I need a flight. And we can add another one to give more variety. Next, we need to add the parameters to capture the user input. So let's say the user gave us any details, we'll need to capture those details about the booking. First, we're going to add the departure city. So we need to know which city they're going to travel from, right? So this is the name of the parameter. Next, we have entity. So here, these are the default ones that are provided by Dialogflow. You can see here in the documentation, there's several types of entities. These are already there, ready to be used. And the entity is used to extract specific pieces of data from the user inputs. So this is the one that we want. We want to get, or we want to extract the city name. So we're going to paste this here, and this will help it to make sure to look out for this type of data. And the value here, this is like a placeholder. So whenever the chatbot, picks out the city name, it will put it in this placeholder. Next, we're going to make sure to check required. This will give us the chance to add a prompt. When we add this prompt, it means that we're telling the chatbot, in order to get this piece of data, you need to ask the user this question. So in this case, we're asking from which city will you be departing? Now this is saved here, and we can add several more to get more data about the details of the booking. Here you can see me copy and paste it to make sure we have the same name of the parameter name and the placeholder, but it's all right. Now I'm going to add a prompt to ensure that we will get the data from the user. We're going to scroll down. So after we have the user ask us this question, and then we ask the user these questions and get all these data from them, what do we want the chatbot to respond with? So here is the final response after getting all this data. So I just wrote down, I have booked your flight from this. As you can see, the departure city, this is the value that I referred to earlier. This is the placeholder. So once the user gives us this data, it's going to be inserted here and it will be displayed to them. And you're going to see that later when we demonstrate it. So to add a bit of variety, I'm going to add a different response so that whenever we test it, we don't have to always get the same response. This is how you can see whether the chatbot is just, it has only one response every time. It can have a different responses, which makes it more natural, I guess. Now, after we save, we can actually go back and then test it out. It's here, as you can see, it's added. So we'll start by greeting it, and this response is from the welcome intent. I'm just saying I'm doing well, being polite to the chatbot, because why not? But of course, we want to make sure to add the keywords book flight to ensure that we trigger the book flight intent. As you can see, it started asking me one of the questions for the parameters. So I gave it the answer, and now it's asking me again. Since we checked all of them as required, the chatbot is going to continue asking me all of the questions to get all of the data. And if you observe, you can see that the data is being saved down there below. And we will look at that later as well. Right, so this is the final response from the chatbot. It took in all the data I gave it and it inserted it into the placeholders. As for the format, you can see that it's in the documentation. So before you use it, you can make sure that this is the format that you want. Right. So another interesting thing we can do is to add a follow-up. So let's say the user has something else to say, we can give more responses according to. So if we ask them a question, for example, and then they say yes, so when we add more next or any of these, this is what we want the chatbot to say if we get the user to say any of these phrases. And next, for example, could be done for instructions or a recipe. Right, so now back to our case. Now that we have these entities here, these are the system ones, which are already predefined, but we can create our own. An example I can provide for this is, let's say we want to get information about emotions, so the emotions of the user. This means, for example, if we're asking the user, how are you feeling today? They can say, oh, I'm feeling sad, or an alternative to sad could be the word depressed. And once we get these responses according to the response they give us, we can create a new intent. And let's say we create an intent sadness. We want the chatbot to respond to them according to which emotion they're feeling. So this is a custom entity. However, usually entities, the ones that are commonly used, are already there in the system, predefined ones. So it's not usually something we work with, but it's really interesting and could provide more flexibility and more variety if needed. Right, so next, I'm assuming that we want to also know about what if I need this data that we get from the user. So one of the ways to do this is through fulfillment. In this part, we need to enable this, and then here we enter the URL from the backend endpoint. So it means the server that we are using in our backend, whether that's a website or an application, we need to provide something here so that we can get requests and we get information from the chatbot here, or the Dialogflow solution. This is a bit more technical compared to what we're doing so far. Another way to integrate this is through the web demo. So it provides a piece of code or a link where you can integrate this to your website or application. I have tried this before. So I have used this link, I've integrated it in the back end of my application. And whenever I click on a button on the application, it hosts this and it provides the user a web version of the chatbot and they can use it. Another way is through Dialogflow Messenger. So you know how sometimes when you open a website and there is a pop-up on the side that is the chatbot or live chat. So yep, you can also have this integrated to your product or solution. And this is a demo of how it could look like. Yeah. Right. So as you can see, here are other alternatives and other applications to integrate the chatbot to. And it's really not that complex. Dialogflow also offers pre-built agents that you can explore and customize. These agents come with predefined intents and entities for common use cases. You can find these in the pre-built agents section and use them as a starting point for a chatbot. So here we can, let's rename it, and we can either choose an existing one or just simply create a new project. For the sake of demonstrating, let's just create a new one. So this is what I created last time from scratch, but now this one is already created for me. It doesn't have all the responses because, of course, I want to add what the responses would be. But here, this is the follow-up that I was referring to earlier. So let's say I would like to book to test it out, as you can see, we didn't get any responses because it does not add the responses to us. We have to go and add the responses. But here are all the parameters and all the details and data that we can gather or collect from the user, which is really good. So if we click on it, we can see here all the entities or parameters that were added. And let's just try this one out. And let's say the prompt here is from which country? Yeah, just for the sake of simplicity. So now we save it. In order to be able to trigger this intent, we need to use the word book or BookFlight. So from which country? It immediately started collecting the data from me because I gave it a prompt to ask me to collect that data. So now we can see here the entities. These are the ones they customized and these are the system ones. Right. To recap, to be able to deploy the chatbot, we'll use the fulfillment and integration sections in the Dialogflow to enable the webhook and provide the URL for your backend server. So in the integration here, you'll get the embed code to add to your website or backend code. Right, so now I want to test something. I want to say thank you. But as you can see, there's no response for that, which could be enabled in this section here, small talk. This will enable the chatbot to be able to hold a very simple interaction, yet could be very meaningful. So let's say we want to add greetings, we want to add things that the user wants to say, or any form of courtesy. So if the user said thank you, we want the chatbot to be able to say you're welcome. We don't want the chatbot to be like, hey, what is that? So once we say thank you here, oh, okay. So the context, we need to remove this because now the chatbot is still remembering the last thing we talked about and we still didn't move on from it. So we reset it that way. It's as if we're starting from scratch. So again, thank you. You're most welcome. So this is what we want. If you'd like us to explore this more, then I'll be glad to do so. We've covered a lot today, but there's always room for improvement when it comes to training the chatbot. And in the next video, maybe we can explore custom entities or maybe the technical side of it and maybe a sample of how to integrate it to a solution backend, or perhaps explore the small talk or pre-built agents. See you on the next one.